everyone. This is just a little video to show you how I do the applique of the stems and actually all of the applique on the reflecting garden quilt. And I'm just going to show you how to do the petal pieces and the stems. I do all of my applique the same way, so you can use the same method to do your butterfly pieces and your dragonfly pieces if you want to, or you can use your favorite method. You don't have to use my applique method in any of this, but I just wanted to show you how I do it just to make it easier for you in case you don't have a favorite way yet. This is my favorite way because I find it the fastest and the easiest. So I hope that you will like it as much as I do because it has really revolutionized my applique. I hated applique for years, and now I really love it doing it with this method. I started doing this after I started doing English paper piecing. I started doing applique this way and just found that I really, really love applique now, which I never have. So, and I've been quilting for 30 years. So, anyway, this is your flower petal shape. I'm not sure how it will come in the magazine, but on my paper, this is how it is. And so this is just the flower petal shape that you'll have. And this is a piece of applique paper. So what applique paper is it's fusible. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it's got kind of a shine on the back, which is the fusible part. The other side is just the paper part. And what you do is just trace your applique pieces onto it, onto the paper part, and then use it to turn against so that you don't have to do needle turn with your applique. I have a little bit of arthritis in my hands, and doing needle turn really fatigues my hands. So I don't know if you can see this very well on camera, but you can see right through this applique paper, which makes it really easy. You don't need a light box to trace your pieces. So I'm just going to go ahead and trace this petal piece. It's got a flat side on one side, so I went ahead and put that against the flat side of the paper. And I just use regular fabric scissors for this. It's fiber, it's not paper, so it doesn't hurt your fabric scissors. And when you use this, it's a little bit stiff when you use it to start with. But once you wash your quilt, it actually washes away. It doesn't wash completely away. It kind of turns into a very, very thin film, and you can't feel it under your fabric at all. So it's really nice to have it, to use it this way. So I've gone ahead and cut out my shape, and what you do is just press it to the back of your fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and use this red dot. It's kind of an orangey red, like a tomato color. And you want to leave 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around the outside because there's no seam allowances on these applique pieces. So I'll leave 1/4 of an inch around the outside of the piece, and I'll go ahead and press it. You can't see that on camera because I've got my ironing board over here, but it'll just take a second. Okay, so I've just pressed it to the back of my fabric. Now I'm just going to cut out with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, or however much you want. You don't have to make it any certain size. Not even super careful about how big I make it, but I just make sure that it's at least 1/4 of an inch. Some people do a scant 1/4 inch. You can do whatever you want. I try to make it as easy as possible. And if you want to be super precise and do 1/4 of an inch, that's up to you. Go ahead and do it. Okay, so you just cut it out with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around the outside. I'm going to go get my glue pen. Hold on a moment. Okay, so I've got my glue pen. This is just a regular sew line glue pen. And if you are going to hand stitch this and you are right-handed, you're going to want to work in a counterclockwise direction. If you're left-handed, you want to work in a clockwise direction. And the reason for that is that your flags, which are your little corners, I call them flags, are going to go a certain direction. If you work counterclockwise as a right-handed person, it makes it easier for you to get your points incorporated. So I'm just putting some fabric glue on the applique paper. And when I do curves, I kind of work back and forwards like this, and it just helps to gather your fabric so that you don't end up with pointy curves. So I use both hands. I leave my curve flat. And can you see the little gathers that it's made? And those little gathers are what make this not have points on your curves. So that's it. It's all turned and ready to be appliqued onto your block. So this is just representing your quilt. Your whole quilt will be put together at this point when you get to the applique point. And the petals are going to go last. So you're going to do your stems and your little buds first. And I'm not going to show you how I appliqued the buds, but I am going to show you how I do the stems. So what I do is I take usually a water-soluble pen in this case. Let's see, find one here. Okay, so I have a disappearing ink pen, and what I do, so with the quilt, there'll be a square here, and then on some of the blocks, you'll have another one here, and then on some of them, it'll go all the way to the bottom of the quilt. So what you're going to do is mark, if it's the bottom of the quilt, if it's one of the ones that goes all the way to the bottom, which this would be one, I would mark 6 inches along the whole bottom of the quilt. And in this case, that would come out to the center of where this block is. So I'm going to go ahead. This is 6.5. So I'm going to do 3.25. So this is where I want the bottom of the stem to end up. And I start in the middle of the block. And because this is disappearing ink, I'm not going to worry about if I make a mistake drawing my lines. And really, there's no way to make a mistake because all we're going to do is do a very, very soft curved line. You're not going to make it super crazy. It's not going to go in all kinds of weird directions. It's just going to be a very soft curve. And then I'm just going to aim for that dot that I made here at the bottom. So I'm going to start here in the center of the block, and I'm just going to draw a slight curve. And it doesn't have to come out perfect right to the center of that either. It doesn't, I mean, as long as it's close, nobody's going to go up to your quilt and measure that it's exactly 6 inches apart at the bottom. So you don't have to worry about that. So as you can see, it's just a very simple, slight curve. And you could almost do this with a straight stem piece, but I am going to use bias. And if you've never done bias before, I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick how to do it. It's very simple. With these pieces, you can use a fat quarter, you can use a 1/2 yard piece. This is a little more than a 1/2 yard. As you can see, I've already cut bias pieces off of this. So it's already got an angle at one side, but I'll show you how to do it from start. So from the start, you'll go to your selvage. Let me get this pressed a little bit. So go down to the bottom to the selvage because your selvages are straight. And you want to go use that straight line at the bottom of your selvage. So you're going to use your selvage. And you'll take your ruler. And if you look on your ruler, you'll see all of these marked lines with angles. This is your 45-degree angle, and that's what the angle So there's one going this way and one going this way. That's the angle you're going to use to cut your bias, because 45-degree angle makes it a perfect bias. And then you just lay your ruler down. This is the 45-degree angle on my ruler. I'm going to put it across the straight edge of my selvage. And I'm going to start about here. You could start farther down. I think we have some pieces that are only 5 inches. So to get a 5-inch bias, since we're going this direction, you really can start way over here in the corner. But I want to, since I'm just showing you, I'm just going to cut one piece off of here. So you just line up your 45-degree angle at the bottom of your selvage. And you just cut an angle. Now the edges of these two pieces are going to be stretchy, and that's why we call it bias. So this edge is very stretchy. As you can see, I'm stretching that fabric a lot. And the reason that you want a stretchy edge is so that when you put it on a curve, you can stretch it and make it go around the curve and it will still stay flat. And that won't make much sense to you at this very moment, but it will in a minute when we are going to So this is already cut at a bias. So all I have to do, I need 1.5-inch strips, and this is going to go off the camera. Sorry about that, y'all. So I'm just going to line this up at 1.5 inches along the already cut bias edge and cut a strip. I'm working on a small cutting area right now, so I have to move it as I go. And excuse me that I'm clearing my throat as well. When it rains, which it has been doing nonstop here for a few weeks, I get allergies, and so I have a little bit of allergies right now. And I'm just getting this straight. Okay. Okay, so here's our strip. It's a bias strip, so it's nice and stretchy. And what I'm going to do, this is my easy way of doing stems. It's super easy. I hope you like it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to my iron, and I'm going to press this in half. Sorry, this is just going to take me a second. Be off screen here for a second while I'm doing this. So the reason I like doing this way, doing stems this way, if they're big enough, I like doing regular bias strip stems as well, but I like doing stems this way because it's super fast and easy to do them on your sewing machine. So what we're going to do now is go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to take, first of all, I'm going to cut this straight on the end. I'm going to flip this over by 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it flat again. And then I'm going to place it right where the raw edge is against that line that I drew. And I'm going to sew 1/4 inch seam. And so I'm going to keep moving this and stretching it a little bit so that it will go around those curves. And I'm going to sew 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to move over to the sewing machine and do that. So give me a second to move over there. I'm just going to use a regular straight stitch. You don't need to use an applique stitch of any kind, just a regular straight stitch. Again, I flipped this over. Now, if you're doing the stems that go between the two flowers, you're going to want to flip it here at the top and then at the bottom when you get to the bottom of it. But this is going to be, but if you're doing one of the ones that goes all the way to the bottom of your quilt, then you don't need to flip over the bottom because it will get caught up in your border seam. So you don't need to worry about that. Okay. Okay, so I'm starting here just at the very bottom of that diamond shape where the flower is going to be made. And again, we're doing this before we've put the flower petals on. So just right there at the bottom of that point, and we're going to go ahead and do a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm just going to start out, I'm going to take about 2 back stitches just to hold it while I'm manipulating it. So here is my drawn line, as you can see. And so I'm just going to start going along the edge. And then as I get to a curve, I pull the bias tape and that makes it flatten out and go into the curve. And then it's not even very slow, but just slowly go around so that I keep it right on that curve that I drew. This is not a 1/4 inch foot, by the way. It's slightly less than a 1/4 of an inch. That's why I'm not going right at the edge. But it doesn't even have to be a perfect 1/4 inch seam. That's another thing about this. It's very, very forgiving. So I'm just keeping my strip right there on the edge of that drawn line. You could make that line with a pencil, a fabric pencil, or anything, because you're not going to see it after, because you'll be sewing over it. So, but I just always use a water soluble pen because I find it makes me less nervous. Okay, so that's it, all the way to the bottom already, and there was nothing to it, right? Easy. So that's what you do with that. Now, if you want to machine applique this, you can totally do that. What you do is you flip this over, and you can either use a straight stitch if straight stitch applique doesn't bother you, or you can use a zigzag stitch with invisible thread to sew the edge of this. Or you can hand applique, which is what I like to do. So when you flip this over, as you can see, it more than covers your seam allowance, and it goes right to the center of the flower. So you've actually done a perfect stem, and it curves very easily because you've got a bias piece. So it just goes right along, and all you do is just flip it right over, and you can press it if you want to, or you can leave it unpressed. It doesn't matter. And then I usually press it just to make it stay down easier while I'm appliquing it. So that's what you do for the stem. Now let me show you real quick. It's only going to take another second. I'll show you what happens when you then put your flower petals on. So I am just going to applique this, the top of this stem down real quick, so that you can see how it goes. Once you put, I'm actually going the wrong direction. I would normally be working from the bottom up, so this is going to be a little awkward for me. Okay. And I'm just going to cut that off. I just wanted to have that down so that you could see. When we put the petals on, they will actually go like this. So this will be sewn already into your quilt. The petals will go on over the top of the stem. So you can applique this down right here at the top, and then all of this will get appliqued before you put your flower petals on. And then your flower petals will go on, and then your little flower will be so cute. So anyway, I hope this helped you with doing your stems. They are very simple, very easy and fast, and you really don't need to be afraid of applique because it is an easy and fun technique, and you can make so many beautiful quilts with applique. So I hope you enjoyed this. I have a lot of other videos for appliquing and sewing. And if you need any extra help on those, feel free to contact me or email me, and I'd be happy to send you a link. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.